Okay, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to I hope, Hashem should help, a fascinating journey into the mystical realm. Sometimes we have a little spiritual, mystical playground. Swings, sliding ponds, seesaws, merry-go-rounds. That's my little Disneyland. So in any case, tonight is one of those classes. Why? Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim is where Torah gets very technical and very, very, very legal. And for spiritual people like the more spiritualists, it's a little harder to adapt to all the nitty-gritty laws. So the real cool thing is to be able to find the really cool Kabalah in the nitty-gritty, what seems to be dry, very legal and just logical side of Torah, to see the infinite godliness. Right in the beginning of the parsha, it says, "Ve'ela mishpatim asher tasem lefneihem." Excuse me. And these are the laws that you should put before them. So Rashi says that the word ve'ela starts with a vav, which says, and these are the laws. And why does it say, and these are the laws? That it implies that just like we're just coming off the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments was the most godliest experience ever, it was face to face with God, and obviously means that we were engaging the super rational, what's beyond all grasp and all understanding. So obviously we experienced it as infinitely mystical and beyond, even though the actual commandments were pretty simple, but still we can sense the endless depth of the divine in it. But right after that, it's like amazing. We just like immediately right after that, like end up in discussion of pure law, governing legalities of monetary law and civil law and things like this, which one can argue is just plain simple logic. So Rashi wants to give us the sense of transcendence. The Torah wants to give us a sense to recognize that what seems to us as logical law is really also transcendental godliness. It's just that God, with his infinite wisdom, was able to package it and able to contract it and bring it down in a way that we don't even notice its mysticism. We don't even notice its mystical element, its abstraction, its godliness. What we are going to do today is we're going to tear open a little bit and find a whole canyon of immense mystical ideas in what seems to be the most down-to-earth, grounded experience in Judaism, and that is what all the Talmudists study. Okay? So if you would take a Talmudist and you would present him with what I am teaching tonight, one of the two things. Either they would get super excited because they'll say, wow, this is crazy. Or they're going to have a heart attack, God forbid. In other words, like, they like to just see Torah as a very, practical, down-to-earth discussion. And here it's like, whoa. The backbone of all this stuff is just pure divinity. So where am I taking this? One of my favorite books, Reb Levi Yitzchak, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father, spectacular Kabbalist, off the charts. I'll repeat that again. Off the chart Kabbalist, genius of genius. And anybody that even dabbles a tiny bit in his books realizes that this is like on a whole different level. I mean, even people who study Kabbalah are just absolutely baffled by the incredible genius of him. And this was just a little bit of his writings when he was in the end of his life, when he was in exile. He didn't have any of his books. His wife, that we'll mention her today. No, Today's the yard site of the Rebbe's and the Rebbe's wife. This is the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Tzimchana, but still a day when we celebrate the feminine side of the Chabad dynasty. She went and she, took herbs and made ink for him. And with that little bit of ink, he was able to write on the sides of his books. On the side, he would make notes. And all we have from him today are only these writings. All his other writings that he wrote the rest of his life is somewhere, it's buried somewhere, hidden somewhere. We don't have it. Imagine what that contains. This stuff is enough to keep you busy for, you really, really want to tackle what we do have, 4 books. It's incredible. Any case, so is what we're doing tonight, and we're also going to see there's an incredible beauty to this. So, what we are going to start with is a passage. Let's first talk about the structure of Jewish law. The structure of what creates the bulk of Jewish civil law and criminal law is mostly contained in 3 tractates. These 3 tractates are really 3 parts. They are really 3 parts of one tractate, of one Masechta. Hi. So I was going to wait till you came, but then we started. Don't worry. So they really are 3 divisions and 3 parts of one tractate, and that tractate is called tractate. Initially, it's called Masechtes Nezikin, which means the tractate in Talmud that deals with Nezikin means harmful damage. And it's basically coming to deal with all various different types of responsibilities that we have in regarding other people and not damaging property or any other infliction to someone else or to their property, and how people are held accountable for their actions. And there's different phases, as we're going to see in a moment. This tractate Nezikin, which is today's days, we don't call it tractate Nezikin because it was split in, it had initially 30 chapters, but that would be very, very big. So they divided into 3 sections and it became 3 tractates. And that's called bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. That is probably the most studied Talmudic text in all yeshiva study. It's these 3 tractates: bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. I mean, there's some others that are yeshiva masechtas here and there, Yivamis, Ksubis, Kedushin. There's a few more that they study in yeshivas a lot. But these 3 are like at the core. There's really one Masechta. And obviously, you can understand it's the logical elements of law. Those who study Talmud really well and then go to law school have an incredible advantage of able to learn how to think and so on and so forth. Obviously, some things are different, but so much of it grows out of the Torah. But that's what it is. It's the basis. It starts in the Mishnah. And then later, the Talmud, which is the exploration or the expounding on the Mishnah, goes off and expounds on it. And so this is basically, if you would count it all together, you would have close to 500 pages of Talmudic study in these 3 tractates, and that's a lot. So it was divided into 3. The 3 names of them is bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. So bava kama really means the first section. Bava metzia means the middle section. And bava basra, it's Aramaic words, means the last section. So the first section, the middle section, and the last section. We'll soon see that the word bava also actually means, I think, means an entranceway. Bava means like a doorway. So this is like the first entranceway, the second, and it's the third. But what we're going to see it has a very, very deep mystical meaning. The name bava, bava metzia, bava basra. The bava of it. Maybe we could have called the class the mystery of the bava. Anyways, but it has a very deep mystical meaning. Now, these three tractates, let me first give you a brief understanding of it. Each of them have 10 chapters. So there's 10 chapters in Baba Kama, 10 in the middle, and 10 in the last one. So altogether, all three of them would have had 30 chapters. And then 10 and 10 and 10. Now, the division of them into these three are not only, they're not all equal, meaning all tackling the same general subject, and then you're just dividing them because of the length of it, so it's split like that. It's also split based on content. Baba Kama is dealing with the most violent part of human nature. It's dealing with harmful, where one person harms someone else, either directly. Some of it is dealing with a human being inflicting harm on someone else or on someone else's property, physically, the human himself, and the punishments and payback that needs to be in those cases. Or if someone's property inflicts damage. That means if someone is not careful and makes a fire and their fire is someone else's property, the payments that have to be made. Same as also if someone's animal goes out and damages someone else's property. Or if someone leaves a dangerous pitfall in the street, in the public domain. Someone puts out something and causes other people to get harmed. They're not careful. Someone dug a pit. The essence of it, the Torah uses the idea of a pit, but it's not only a pit. It's, put something slippery on the floor and people slip and fall, and based on that, so you're liable for those damages. So that's basically the discussion of Baba Kama. It's where there is an infliction of harmony, of harm, real harm, from one to the other, and dealing with the laws that govern how you can basically sue someone and what their payments would be, on which level they would be responsible. Baba Metzia is already a section of the law which doesn't deal with such harm. However, it's still dealing with conflict, because we're talking about cases where people have monetary arguments regarding to monetary things. I worked for you, you didn't pay me. Or I worked for you and you were supposed to take care and pay me, give me lunch, but you didn't give me lunch. Is lunch included? Is it not included in my payment? So on and so forth. Or people find a lost object, two people together, and they're fighting over it. I found it, you found it. So it wasn't that any one person went and inflicted someone else's damage, but that's what the classical example of Bava Metzia starts with. Two people are, grabbing onto a garment that they found on the street, and this one says, I found it, the other one, I found it. And there you go, they end up in court. It's all mine, the whole thing is mine, the whole thing is mine. How do you resolve this conflict? And it goes into the various different things. Part of the discussion in Bava Metzia, in the midsection, is the laws pertaining to the four guardians. Again, it's not anything vicious that someone did, it's just someone came and gave somebody to watch something for them, and then it got damaged, either because of negligence or because of or wasn't their fault. But yet, the question is what the liability is. So again, we're not talking about in cases that are starting off with an act of violence, theft, or damage. We're talking about just the common arguments that will happen constantly between people in a society. And but it involves some level of damage where, you might be stealing from me, and so on and so forth. Then we get to Baba Basra. The last phase of Baba Basra is the most civil of all three. It's talking about how to make contracts regarding contract law when it comes to buying and selling, or neighbors, laws governing neighbors. What are you allowed to build outside of your house? What can your neighbor stop you from building? partnerships. That's what I'm saying. Basically partnerships. Or when I'm buying or selling something, what is included in the sale? If I sold you this, can you say that, oh, that I thought it comes with this, it doesn't come with that, and so on and so forth. So these are all situations where you don't have anybody stealing. It's just we want to know from the get-go what is the right way to see the one's rights in a world where everybody wants it to be their way. What is the objective truth, not the subjective? And you have all the subjective arguments, and yet the Torah is going to sort out what is the correct and right way. And that is bava basra. So these are the three sections. Now the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in his last talk that he gave us, and I gave a class on this last year, Pashas Mishpatim, the Rebbe says an amazing thing, that the power of this week's Torah portion is enormous. Because it's a week after we got the Torah. And since we received the Torah, what is the Torah supposed to do? It's supposed to refine the world. It's supposed to fix the creation. And Torah immediately starts its job in fixing, rectifying, and moving a world that was once a jungle into a civilized place until the world becomes so right and so correct and so just that it's ready for God to move in. And that is Mashiach. So there is a process of purification that goes through the ages and rectifies and elevates humanity. So the Rebbe says these are the three stages of bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. We should see it not only as three different sections of the Talmud, but we can see it as three. We can see it as progressiveness. The world progressing from a world where people were really hurting each other and harming each other. After the bava kama state, let's say it took 1,000 years of the application of Torah in the world, where people became less harmful to each other, less intentionally abusive to each other on the whole. I'm not talking about individual criminals. We have still quite a bit going on, but I'm talking about what is officially accepted by law in people's minds, or what is rejected. It used to be back then that anybody that had power over someone else took advantage and abused people. Now, in general, we're living in a world of freedom, a world of rights, and so on and so forth. Do people act with criminal behavior? Yes, that happens. But it's still not the social norm that is accepted. And that's because there is a purification that has happened in the world as a result of the Torah study and the Torah world and godliness that has been brought into the world, which actually refined and changed the human psyche. So we moved from bava kama, we moved into a stage where there's still a lot of disputes, but yet, which is not violent in nature, so to speak. And then finally, the world moves to a state where we just want to figure it out, how to live in peace and harmony with each other and do things right. Like the last stage, which is no more dealing with, it's just like looking at partnerships. And basically like in Mashiach's world, where we all will be partners. So these are three stages, and that's why the Rebbe says an interesting thing. He says that's why the book is called the initial tractate. Before you get the bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra, which means the first part, the first door, the first entranceway, the second or the third, when they were all one mesechta, it's mesechtas nezikin. Nezikin means damages. And the Rebbe says what it really means is it's referring to the long exile, which the time of exile is a time where there's a lot of damage in the world. The cosmos are damaged. The entire cosmic order is in a state that needs rectification. As we know that since the sin of Adam and Eve, of Adam and Chava, there was a wreckage that took place. And all the mitzvot that we've been doing, all of our souls coming down over here, are all part of this progression of rectification and purification and elevation, in which we all do a tikkun, the famous idea of tikkun olam. It's not always used in the right way, but the concept of it is a true concept. It's a tikkun, it's a rectification of the world, a process that happens throughout the exile. And when we're done this process of fixing the world, we enter into the Messianic time. So we have to complete the Seder, the order of Nezikin. This is what we've discussed last year a little bit. What we are going to do today is we're going to we're going to dive deeply, mystically into the whole inner godly realm that allows for these, on a very, very sublime level, where the root and the source of where it leaves the possibilities of all these latter damages can occur. In other words, the reason why the world can be messed up down here below is because there are certain, God has, set up the system in the spiritual spheres above that are the source of creation with certain energies and powers that will allow, in order for creation to play itself out, so will allow for these mishaps to happen, for this um, um, incohesive world, for a world that is not synchronized, for a world that's clashing with each other, for a world of war and strife and harm and danger and so on and so forth, for a world where criminality can take place. However, when we're doing the tikkun, by studying baba kama, baba metzia, baba basra, people have no idea that these very yeshiva boys who study in yeshiva years and years and years, and they're studying and they're not becoming lawyers and they're not going to practice law. And sometimes you wonder, like, why are they spending? They're such a waste of talent. They're such bright boys. They have such bright minds. Or just go to college and become, and do something productive with your life. You're learning over there, discussing the arguments of the, or really they're doing the most productive thing. They're fixing existence. They're fixing things. They're tightening the loose screws that are at the very, 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 very they're tightening the nuts and the bolts of creation and of existence, or fixing or tweaking things at the very bottom. We'll soon see how it works. And by doing it over there, it manifests a million levels lower in a new world that changes, in people's minds shifting and changing because of all these studies that have been studied for thousands of years. It is having a cosmic effect because they're tinkering, however, in the divine. They're so to speak, aligning things or purifying things at the very, very, very beginning of beginning, and all that has repercussions and ripple effects down in this world and changes reality. Okay, so where are we going to work with? We're going to work today with two things. I'm going to read to you a passage of the Zohar. And this is a passage in the Zohar, it's not even in this week's Parsha, a passage in the Zohar from Parshas Balak, that's in Numbers. It's what we read generally in the summer, around Tammuz time. And what the Zohar does, I'll tell you before we start, the Zohar is addressing this tractate that I've been talking about, the tractate of damages of Nezikin. And the Zohar traces the sages' creation of this tractate. The Zohar traces it to a pasuk, to a verse. So the Zohar finds where these tractates are hinted to in the parsha. Which parsha? Our parsha. Parshas Mishpatim. Now, the truth is, you don't have to trace it and find it in a kind of in a hinted way, in a way of where it is kind of embedded and hinted. This week's parsha openly discusses all these laws, the laws of damages of someone's ox and so on and so forth, and someone makes a fire and all this. But I'm not talking about that. Yes, the laws are explicitly stated, but we're talking about the order of the tractate itself. The tractate, baba kama, baba metzia, baba basra, which I just gave you the descriptions of what they speak about. The Zohar is going to find it in one verse this week, which this is the source not only of these three tractates, but also in the order of the three tractates. And the Zohar is explaining why they set it up in that order based on a verse in this week's parsha. So before we learn the Zohar, let me read to you the verse in this week's parsha, the pasuk, and then we're going to see what the Zohar said, and then we're going to take a plunge into some really cool mystical ideas, and suddenly it's going to be wow. Okay, so let's go. This is again in Chumash this week. It's talking about a shomer. actually talking about a shomer sachar. No, a shomer chinam, not a shomer sachar. It's talking about one of the guardians. It's in Perek Chav Beis, chapter 22, a pasuk ches. Pasuk ches. Are you you read Hebrew? No, okay. Or else I would share with you and read it inside. But I'll translate it. It's okay because it's okay. If you read Hebrew, it's a different story. It would help by looking in, but it's okay. So it says like this. I'll call devar. Oh, so let me first give you a little background in a second. This is talking about when a person gives someone to guard something for them. It's an unpaid. It's talking about an unpaid guardian. In halachic terms, that's referred to as shomer china. 22 verse ches. Okay, Shmois 22 verse 8. So let me read it again. Oh, so wait. So we're talking about an unpaid guardian. The unpaid guardian, right? I have everybody attention here. Okay. The unpaid guardian, you found it? I'm not going to have peace until you find it. You have it. Good. Perfect. Now, we're talking about the unpaid guardian. Okay. Someone gives something to someone else to watch, and then they come back and to pick it up. And the guy says, I don't know, it's not him. So since he didn't pay him, the person's responsibilities are not too high because he's doing you a favor. So if we can prove a negligence, he might have to pay. But if he can't prove negligence, doesn't have to pay if he got stolen. But the person has to make an oath. He has to make an oath that he didn't steal it. Maybe he stole it. Maybe he liked it and just hid it. He has it or sold it or something. So he's obligated to swear in the court. Okay, that's the idea. Then later it says, if in the end we found out that he lied, he swore and he lied, he's going to have to pay double. That's the payment that you have to pay. If you stole, in this case, when a shomer swears about something, he pays kefil, which means paying back double. Meaning you have to pay twice the value of the object that was given to you. If the value was $100, you have to pay back $200. Okay. So the pasuk says, the verse that we're going to be referring to, it says, I'll call dvar pesha, on every sinful word, which means on anything that the person lied about, anything that there was a lie, whether it was al shar, whether it was an ox, al chamar, whether it was a donkey, al seh, whether it was a sheep. Simply it means whatever it was that he was guarding, an animal, one of the three animals, an ox, a donkey, or a sheep, al salma, or a garment. Maybe he gave him or her to watch a dress for them, a garment. Or al kol aveda, or on any lost object. And then it says, that, again, there's various different explanations over here, but the simple meaning is that witnesses come and say, this guy said it was stolen. Let us show you where it is. He has it hidden in his cellar. So in the end, he has to pay double. Okay, that's what it says. What we are going to stop is on this beginning of this verse, where the Zohar says, not the Zohar, the verse says, on every sinful word or anything that he or any sinful davar can mean either word or davar can mean subject. On any element of crime over here that was sinful, pesha means a sinful something, whether it was an ox, a donkey, a sheep, or a garment. So first of all, let's notice it mentions four possibilities of something. Okay, an ox, a donkey, a sheep, and a garment. But then in addition to that, it mentions al kol aveda, or any lost object. Okay. Now, I also want you to note something else. What we notice in this verse is that it starts off with general, it goes into specific and it goes back to general. And we find that many times in the Torah. But whenever the Torah does that it starts with general, specific, and general, it comes to teach us there's a lot of law that you learn out from this system which the Torah uses. So the rabbis were able to extrapolate a lot of ideas when you find a generalization, a specification, and a generalization again. This is one of the cases where you have general, specific, and general. Why? A kol dvar pesha means anything that he's lying about. That's anything, all. Then it says specific, on an ox, a donkey, a sheep, or a garment, 4 details. Then it goes back to generalization. Al kol aveda, or anything that got lost. Anything. So you're going back to general. Okay, I want you to notice that. Fine. The Zohar, which is again a book of mysticism, is going to find the entire tractate of Talmud in this verse. So let me read to you the passage of the Zohar. Reb Chizkiah Pasach, Reb Chizkiah, one of the great sages, when he opened up his teaching, there's a verse in Isaiah, in Yeshaya, chapter 56, verse number 1. Koyamar Hashem, so says God, Shimru Mishpat, observe judgment. That means live, be careful, live in a just manner. Shimru, observe judgment. Or let me put it this way, observe the law, another way of saying it. Mishpat is the same like this week's parasha, Mishpatim. So Shimru Mishpat, observe the law, Vasu Tzedakah, and do Tzedakah, do righteousness and also Tzedakah. Kikroiva Yeshuasi, because my salvation is close to coming. Vitzidkasi, and my kindness or my tzedakah, lihigalos, is soon going to be revealed. In other words, a very powerful verse if you think about it. God is saying, you're living in a world of madness. You're living in a world of corruption. You're living in a world where all kinds of things around you is going to suggest to you otherwise. Because it's very easy to say everybody's corrupt, everybody cheats, everybody's dishonest, everybody's doing whatever they want. So what difference does it make what my private behavior is? So God says like this, Shimnu Mishpat, watch, obey the law, the divine law. But not only obey the law, also do tzedakah, be kind, and do extra righteousness. And don't think you are alone in this. Don't think you're gonna despair on the world. You're gonna say, to what benefit is my goodness and my kindness when everything around me is so dark? God is saying, by you doing the law and by you doing tzedakah and keeping the law, kikroiva, it is very close. Yeshua seen my salvation to be lavai to come. Vitzedkasi, and my tzedakah lihigalis, to be revealed. So God is saying, I match you. The more law you obey, and the more you live your life disciplined according to the Torah, and the more goodness and kindness you do, the faster you will bring about. I will match your work, and then my justice, now my salvation and my righteousness or my tzedakah is going to be revealed. And once I reveal my goodness and my salvation, it's going to be a really good work. And it's all going to be to your credit. Because when you did it, you caused me to do it. That's the idea. God says, you are triggering these two things. Now, you see clearly from here that we do two things. We keep the law, mishpat and tzedakah. We're learning about this in the just now in the Thursday night class. We were learning mishpat u'tzedakah beYaakov. We were learning mishpat and tzedakah, right? Just the other day. So now as well, two things. We do mishpat and tzedakah. And we understand, even before we get into everything, we understand that those two things are both, they represent the two energies of kindness and gevura, chesed and gevura. Because mishpat is gevura, it's discipline, It's following and obeying the law, disciplining ourselves to follow the law, which is again a restriction. Tzedakah is goodness, chesed. So as a result of our constrictions, our mishpat, and our tzedakah, God brings salvation and tzedakah. So what you see over here is salvation, for whatever reason, is aligned with mishpat. Mishpat and salvation and Yeshua are on the same thing. But the beauty of the teaching is that there will be a massive outgrowth, an incredible production that will come about of the little things that we do. So today's days, we might look at them and think, I'm not really doing much, but it is massive. It's cosmic. Because as we do them, God does them. Okay, that's the simple verse. Comes the Zohar. And the Zohar says, Kama chavivin Yisrael. How precious are the Jewish people. Kame kutche berichu in front of God. The afal gav the inin chavu kame. Even though they sin before him, even though they are guilty before him, v'chavin kame b'chol zimna v'zimna. And they, not only are they sinful, but they sin again and again. The Zohar says 2 times. In other words, general, first it says general, even though they sin before him. And then the Zohar says, and not only do they sin, but they sin and they sin. Okay, 3 times. What does God do? He loves them so much. He treats their sins as if they were unintentional. So even if we, God forbid, have done certain wreckage and certain sinfulness, and we do it mindfully, which is called in Hebrew, in halachic terminology, it's called bimezid. Bimezid means with intention. God flips it over and he minimizes it as if it was all accidental or unintentional. So Hashem minimizes it. Fine. And that shows God's love. Okay. We'll soon see what does it have to do with this verse. Suddenly, and we continue. And so said the sage Rabbi Hamnuna. He's like the grandfather. He's called Rabbi Hamnuna Saba, the older sage Rabbi Hamnuna. Plus the Babadinat Kinu Rabbanan. The Rabbanan instituted 3 babas. We spoke earlier. 3 tractates of law, of judgment. Besidra Masnisa in the Mishnah. Chadakad Misa, the first one, Baba Kama. What does it deal with? As we said earlier, violent damage, the elements of violence in the world. Now, what I didn't tell you is the tractate Baba Kama, when it introduces the violent side of the world and what really needs to be reined in at first, it begins, the first Mishnah, Sechtas Baba Kama, deals with 4 primary categories of damage. It says, if you want to look at all damage that's possible, we divide it into 4 primary categories. Arba avos nezikin, 4 primary categories of damage. And they are hashar, an animal goring, an animal going out. Now, when you say an animal, the sages explain it's not only animal, it has a broader sense. The idea is that your property has intention to hurt somebody. An animal viciously attacking somebody, a dog attacking someone, okay? With the intention of the dog is to inflict harm, or the intention of the animal. That's one form, sure. Boyer, the other category. Now again, it has offshoots. The other main category of damage is boyer. What's boyer? Boyer is, we said before, when a person creates a damage in a public space. Now, they're not doing anything. They did something earlier, and then their work that they did, because they did not cover it or protect it, caused someone later to fall into it or to get harmed by it, slip in it, and so on and so on. That's the second kind of damage. Boyer. Boyer. Hamave. Mave is when your animals, your property, damage someone else's field or property, but not because it wants the damage, but because it just It's just being an animal. It's just walking or stepping on stuff or eating other people's property. In other words, there's no intention to damage, but it's just neglect and one's damage. That's a third category. And the last category is fire. Okay, a person makes a fire and their fire goes out into someone else's damage and harms. These are the four primary categories. It's important to know that, because once we get to the mystical side of it, you'll see so this is what Masechtas Baba Kama deals with. Violent damages. Someone hurts someone else's property. There is someone damaging. And there are four primary categories. That's the first one. Tinyana, the Zohar says, what's the second bava metzia talking about? Talis deishtakach. A talis that is found. Because what does the Masechtas Bava Metzia start with? Two people found the talis. Two people found the garment, and they're fighting. This guy says it's mine. This guy says it's mine. Okay, a talis that is found. That's the second. Tlusa. What's the third part of the talm of the thing? Shutvin, partners. The laws when partners want to. So let me tell you the beginning of Masechtas Baba Basra. The beginning of Masechtas Baba Basra talks about two people. They share a courtyard, and they decide that they want to split it into. Instead of sharing the whole courtyard together, you have an upstairs neighbor and a downstairs neighbor. So instead of them sharing both, they want their privacy. So I want, let's split it. You take half of it. So it talks about when they build the wall, how they build the wall. That both of them have to chip in on the wall, and that talks about how to do it in a way that it's the right way of them going about it. That's the first Mishnah in the last phase of Seder Nizukim. But then the Zohar says something strange. The laws of partners and Raza da Aveda, and the secret of lost objects. What does the Zohar mean? Talking about when someone loses something and someone finds it, when can you keep it? When do you have to give it back? Right? The problem with that is, where all the Mefarshim, everybody jumps and says, well, that part is not in Baba Metzia. It's not in Baba Basra. It's not in the last section of the Talmud, of this tractate Nezikin. It's in the middle one. Every kid knows this, because every kid that goes to yeshiva, before a lot of kids sadly get turned off. Not turned off, they just have a hard time. But even the kids who get turned off very young, because they just don't have the minds to study and they didn't get them. I mean, even those that are the dropouts, let's say, everybody knows where the laws of lost objects are, because that's what you learn. The first Talmud every school teaches, it's tradition by the Jewish people, is the second chapter of Masechtas Bava Metzia that deals with finding a lost object. So all kids start their Talmud study with this. Everybody knows it's a Bava Metzia. It's not in Baba Basra, which means in the last section. But the Zohar says, Klisa, the third one, Shutvin, is Shutvin, and Raza da Aveda, and the secret of an Aveda. Because of this, one of the greatest Jewish minds and greatest Kabbalists, the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon of Vilna, makes an edit on the Zohar, and he switches it around, and he explains the Zohar over here, the Grove. He takes the Raza da Aveda, and he moves it earlier. He moves it to the earlier part of the Zohar, where the Zohar says a talis that you found, and Aveda, and the lost object, because that belongs in the middle section. Not after partners. Partners is already the third section. So he makes an edit. We're going to see soon, but based on the Rebbe's father's way of learning this, no edit is needed at all. The Zohar doesn't have to be fixed. It's actually accurate the way it is, as we're going to see. My Tama, what is the reason? God, what he does for the Jewish people, you have these three sections, and yet, what does Hashem do? All the intentional sins all become considered unintentional. Going back to the theme of how special the Jewish people are. Which is pretty strange, because who's talking now about sin? No one is talking about sin. We're talking about three different parts of the Talmud dealing with law. There's no one sinning over here. Now, obviously, we can understand that if we take these ideas and we take them out of the narrow application of an animal going wild, meaning your donkey or your ox going out and damaging. But if we turn the ox and the donkey into the human animal, and we're talking about the donkey, the ox going out and goring someone, or a person's or an animal going out and eating someone's tomatoes. If you apply that idea to your own animal soul, so obviously we're talking about sin, sinful behavior, reckless behavior, behavior that is damaging in the world that we do due to our animalistic nature. Or fire. What's fire? Fire is passion, lust. A person has passion and lust, or anger. And that anger goes out and damages. So these things can all be understood on a psychological level. And then it's actually talking about sin. Yet we're saying that that even though these damaging forces exist in the human psyche and in the human experience, but yet God minimizes them and treats them, at least for Israel and the Jewish people, as if they're unintentional. Okay, that's what the Zohar says. Now we get to the last part. The Zohar now says, these three sections that deal with these three subjects, let's take a look of where it's found in the pasuk, the verse that I just read for you. So it says, they set it up that way. You know why they set it up that way? They're following the verse. When the sages of the Talmud made the Talmud, but the Zohar is really giving us a secret, that the sages of the Talmud were also not just great Talmudic geniuses, but they were also great mystics. And they were able to derive it from the pasuk. And we're going to see it only makes sense if you tap into the mystical element of it. We'll soon see. So what does the Zohar say? Going to our verse. Al kol davar pesha, every sinful matter. That's the word I was looking for before. Davar can mean word or matter. Every sinful matter. The high pesha iu dalav izad. So first of all, from this that the verse chooses the word pesha to introduce every type of damage, every type of sin, the Zohar immediately says pesha comes to minimize things. Why? Which is, by the way, again, something that I have to explain now. Usually pesha is a type of sin that's the worst kind of sin. Pesha means rebellion. Peshaim is the worst kind of sin. The Zohar, however, says over here pesha means a shogeg, a lesser of a sin. We'll see. Well, what does the Zohar say? Based on what over here? Like over here, it says Devar Pesha means like it's considered minor. Okay. But the Zohar says over here, only over here, lav bezadon. It's not intention. In other words, what we're giving over here is a blanket exoneration for all sinful activity of all of Israel. The blanket exoneration is from the very get-go, God treats it as unintentional. Now we'll soon see why. Even if people are sometimes doing things pretty bad with pretty intention, yet there's a certain minimization of it, as we'll soon see. Why? I can't control myself, so I'll say it. It's based on the idea that the underlying state of consciousness that we live in is one that is considered mindless. In other words, God has kind of darkened our senses and our power of true awareness. He dulled it. So just like we understand that if someone has gone through, been injected with numbing things, and their mind is not this, you can't really hold them that accountable for everything. I mean, obviously they shouldn't get behind the wheel of the car. You could hold them responsible for that. But when someone's mind is not with themselves completely because of a certain situation, especially if it's not their fault, it's not that they got themselves drunk, it's inherently that way. Like we always know that it is an argument to minimize a crime when someone is mentally problematic. I mean, you have to make sure that he's not a harm to other people, but it is a minimizing factor. So we are, from the very get-go, considered in a state of minimal, we're going to get to that in the end, minimal das. We are in a made, our das is not expansive. Das means our knowledge, our understanding, our consciousness. It's a very distorted consciousness. And therefore, from the very get-go, it's not considered intentional. It's considered mindless. That's number one. Now, what are the things? Man ihu, what are the damages? Al shoir, al chamoir, al seh, ox, donkey, sheep, da baba kama. That's baba kama. Okay, that's what the Zohar says. Because baba kama deals with these things. The first word in baba kama is the four types of damages are shoir, ox. So what does it say over here? Al shoir, on an ox. So shoir is what Masechtas Baba Kama is talking about when it says shoir. So it's talking about these things. Al salma. Remember, well, after the first three animals, what does it say? On a garment. So the moment you hear garment, who's talking about garment? The Zohar says, which part of Talmud is talking about the garment? It's the second tractate in Talmud, Masechtas Baba Metzia. Shnayim Oichsim Betalis, two people holding on to a garment. So that's salma, that's the garment. The baba metzia, that's baba metzia, the middle one. Al kol aveda, every lost object. The baba tlisa, this is the last one. Kol aveda, that's talking about the last part, baba basra. Now, first of all, you see over here, the Vilna Gaon is going to have a hard time over here. If we said that we tweak and we say that the Zohar says that Aveda, lost objects, are part of Baba Metzia, the part of the middle, because like we find it, and not in the last part, like the Vilna Gaon says that you're supposed to do cut and edit, cut and put it over there. Then how does the Gemara now, the Zohar say Al Kol Aveda, which Aveda means a lost object? How does the Zohar now say that that's referring to Baba Basra when Baba Basra doesn't talk about it? So the Vilna Gaon has to tweak that as well. And he does. So he does a major edit. The Vilna Gaon does a major edit. The Rebbe, in his last talk, which he gave on Parshas Mishpatim, in his footnotes, brings this Vilna Gaon. And he says, however, based on my father's teaching, brilliant teaching, that we're going to see in a few moments, the Rebbe says it's very hard to edit so much of the Zohar. Sometimes you make an edit, certain things could be written wrong, but he has to make a major surgery and change around so much, too much editing. The Rebbe doesn't agree with the Vilna Gaon on this edit, too much editing. But if you look at it the way my father says, he says, no edit is needed. It's perfectly understood. How Kol Aveda, every lost object, is actually talking about Baba Basra. Now, I'm going to present you the question. Baba Basra is not talking at all about lost objects, as I said earlier. So how can Kol Aveda be Baba Basra? So that's a good question. It's a very good question until you realize you're learning Zohar. But when you realize you're learning Zohar and you realize that it's very deep secrets, so you go to the light switch and you don't go to the dimmer. And when it's a little too dark and you're confused, you just push the thing up, and it stops being so dim, and suddenly the light opens up. That's exactly what we're going to do right now. We're just going to go to the dial and open it up, and suddenly this is going to become luminous and clear. So the lost object, any lost object. Of course, that's exactly what it's talking about. The two partners who want to make a wall and split their chutzner. You got to know a whole bunch of Kabbalah to be able to get to that. So let's see what it is. So what do we have over here? We have the Zohar saying that in general, there's a pasuk, observe the law, do tzedakah, God's judgment, God's kindness is going to come to the world. The day is coming when the world will be filled with kindness. And by you keeping it now, you're going to have a part in it. And then the Zohar suddenly starts talking about what? Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra. First of all, what's the connection? I mean, a little connection you have, because part of keeping the law, where is the law spelled out? In Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra. That's the main tractate governing civil law. All right? So that's the Messiah. These three parts need to be kept. By keeping that, the Zohar says, God considers our intentional sins like what? Like unintentional. And then the Zohar divides the three parts of tractates. The Zohar divides it in accordance to these, what's mentioned in the pasuk. What is mentioned in the verse? Shor chamor seh, ox, donkey, sheep, is referring to Baba Kama, the first phase, talking about, again, more aggressive kind of damages. Salma, garment, is talking about Baba Metzia, that deals with a garment. And Al Kol Aveda, every lost object, is talking about Baba Basra, which talks about partners. Doesn't talk about, yeah, that's it. But that's the question we're asking. How does Baba Basra work with any lost object? Baba Basra is not talking about lost and found. That was the question we asked. But let me ask you a few other questions. Masechtas Baba Kama starts with 4 primary damages. What did we say earlier? What are the 4 primary damages? An ox going out intentionally damaging, making a pit, or things related to making a pit. Animals going out and damaging not because they want to damage, just because they're negligent and doing animal things and the owner should have watched them. And finally, fire. Damage is coming from a person being uncareful with a fire. Okay, these are the 4 types of damage. So if Baba Kama is talking about 4 damages, how come the verse only mentions 3? Shor, chamor, seh. Only 3, not 4. Secondly, only one of them matches. Shor matches. But how does chamor and seh? Now, seh also matches. Let's see. Shor matches. Why does Shor match? Because Shor is the first one, and Baba Kama is also a Shor, an ox. The second one is a donkey. How does a donkey go equivalent to a pit? What does a pit and a donkey have to do with each other? It seems like it's completely unrelated at all. Now, animals going out and eating, okay. A sheep, seh, is one of these animals that goes out and eats. Careful, the sheep will go off and help himself to the neighbor's carrots growing. I don't know, sheep eat carrots or whatever they eat. So seh matches. But hold it, what's with the last one? Fire. Fire isn't stated at all in the pasuk. Okay? So let's unpack over here. Okay. And here's the secret. Here's the secret. Seder Nezikin, the entire tractate of Masechtas Nezikin, which deals with all the possibilities of fixing and correcting the mistakes in human behavior, either the damages or the arguments, the fights, and also assuring that things should be done fairly as opposed to not fairly, is all related to the inherent condition that God created a pluralistic world with many people in it. God created a world, and a world where everybody has a sense of self and a sense of importance, and everybody wants to look out for themselves, and so on and so forth, which is a direct derivative of the inherent state that Hashem created our world, that the world feels itself separate from God. And because the world feels itself separate from God, that's why there is a whole bunch of ego. And where there is ego, there is conflict. And when there is conflict, there is damage. So you realize one of them comes from the other. It's all rooted in a world that is separated from God. Now, the entire world that is separated from God is because God creates the world. Mystically, those who have been listening to these classes have heard this many times. Hashem created the world through his final one of his attributes, because the attribute of Malchut, the attribute of kingship. The attribute of kingship is the last and final attribute of the divine, where the energy of the divine, so to speak, exits the divine to create. And the very idea that there's such a thing called exiting the divine, which means going out of the unity and stepping into a state where there is disunity. And because there's disunity, obviously that makes room for all the problems and all the wreckage and all the difficulties. But that's the whole purpose of creation, that in the midst of this chaos, in the midst of all this darkness, we should draw God back in and create unity from the disunity. We should create synchronization from the fragmentation. We should unify a distorted world to bring peace into the conflict and bring the oneness of God into the many diversity that there is within the world and harmonize all of existence. Malchus is the Seder of Nezikin. If we trace the Talmudic study of Seder Nezikin and we trace it all the way up to where is it in the divine, it is the attribute of Malchus. The whole book of Nezikin is the tractate of Malchus. Now watch the beautiful idea, just right now. The Talmud tells us in Pirkei Avos, HaMalchus Niknis, Malchus is acquired with 30 qualities. Kingship is acquired with 30 qualities. The Dira talks about, in order to acquire a Torah, you need 48 steps, 48 good traits. You have to work on 48 things to acquire Torah, wisdom. To acquire a kahuna, it also gives you kahuna is you're born with. Torah is with 48 steps. Malchus, 30 qualities for Malchus. We know the moon represents the attribute of Malchus. The moon has a 30-day cycle. Yehuda, who's the king of the Jewish people? What is the tribe and who is the one who's meant to facilitate kingship in this world? Establishing God's kingdom in a world that is not yet obeying God's will, but implementing God's kingdom in this world and bringing the whole world together into the oneness. But where is it really? It's all related to who? Yehuda. The name Yehuda, is numeric value is 30. Yud and Hey is 15. Vav and Dalet is 10. Vav is 6 and Dalet is 4. So 50 is 25. And Hey is another 5. So Yehuda is 30. Because Malchus is 30. The Talmud says that there was a sage whose name was Rav Yehuda. He's not Yehuda from the tribes. He's a rabbi. His name was Yehuda. And the sages say his entire Talmudic occupation was only in the book of Nezikin. He was the master of masters in the laws of civil damage and all this stuff. This was his Masech. Why? Because Yehuda. Malchus is Yehuda. And in the world of Malchus, there could be damage. There could be wreckage. There could be a mess. Without Malchus, there cannot be. We even find, he doesn't say this in the talk, but you see, a Chava is Malchus. Man is the higher energies. Chava, Eve, Adam and Eve. Chava is Malchus. Where was there the first damage? Where did wreckage come into the world? The snake came to Chava. Through Chava, it got to Adam. But the Chava was vulnerable to a corruption. And that corruption then seeked in. And in the divine levels as well, it is explained that Dafka Malchus needs the most shmira, needs the most protection. Because Malchus is the closest to the klipa, to the unholy. You have to guard her and protect her from what? From the chitzonim, from unholy forces to attack her. If you take and look at the 3 tractates, number 1, they have 10, 10, and 10. They have 30 prakim. Because Malchus is acquired with 30 qualities. We're soon going to see, it's not just 30 qualities. We're soon going to see there are 30 powers of Gevura. of restrictions that build the entire structure of Malchus. Malchus is built with 30 Lamed Kalim, 30 vessels of Malchus, which those 30 vessels of Malchus is basically the skeleton of the cosmos. The three worlds, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the world of the creation, the world of formation, the world of Asiya. Each one, Malchus creates them through 10 vessels. The 10, and it's altogether called the 30 vessels of Malchus. So basically means the entire kingdom, the entire world, the entire empire of a creation where you have many. Let's put it this way. If there wouldn't be many, if there wouldn't be society, there wouldn't be a world, there wouldn't be people, there wouldn't be fighting. The fighting comes from all the problems, if we can say, comes about by creating many. You're calling trouble. You're creating the possibility for Seder Nezikin. So now you need 30 chapters to fix that. In other words, to keep it all corrected and to keep it all rectified, right? Now, Seder Nezikin is the fourth order in the Mishnah. The entire Mishnah is built with 6 orders. Zeraim, Moed. Zeraim deals with agricultural mitzvot. Moed deals with time-bound mitzvahs like Shabbos, Yom Tov. Nashim deals with marriage, what's called women marriage. Nezikin deals with damage. And then Kachim deals with sacrifices. And Taharis deals with pure and impure. These are the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Nezikin is the 4th one. Why? Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Yehuda is the 4th one. So Seder Nezikin. And we know in God's throne, there are four legs. One leg is Chesed, that's Avram Avinu. The second leg is Gevura, that's Yitzchak. The third leg, Lev, is Teferes, beauty, which is Yaakov. The 4th leg is Malchus, is King David. David is David HaMelech is the facilitator of the Malchus, and David is the 4th leg. So Seder Nezikin is the 4th one, and David became king when he was 30 years old. So the entire Malchus is so these are the 3 parts of Seder Nezikin, the 3 halakim: bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. And when we dig deeper, we see that these 3 mesechtes, these 3 parts, they're actually the internal structure of the attribute of Malchus. Because Malchus is built primarily from Gevura. Malchus is primarily built through powers of restriction. And very simple, why? Why is Malchus built on Gevura? Because since Malchus is creating space for the creations to exist, Malchus is the sort of all finiteness, time and space, and finitude, and limitations and boundaries. And that's only because God has to restrain his otherwise infinite, endless flowing energy. So to create Malchus, Malchus is built by enormous amount of restraint. Primarily 3 powers of restraint that affect Malchus on 3 levels: in her head, in her body, and in her womb. 3 levels of the woman. Now, let's take it further. Malchus is feminine. The 3 tractates, bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. What are the first letters of each one? Bava kama starts off, Arba avos nezikin. There are 4 primary classes of damage. Arba'a is spelled with an aleph. Starts with an aleph. Arba, aleph. The second tractate, the Sechtes Bava Metzia, starts with a shin. Shnaya moichsim betalis. 2 people holding on to a talis, so it starts with a shin. The last Masechta, Masechtas Bava Basra, deals with partners. So the first word in the Masechta is hashutfim, the partners. So now if you take the first letter, Aleph, Shin, He, spells Isha, spells the woman. That's Malchus. Malchus is the world of the woman. It's the world of the cosmic woman. It's where all of creation takes place, in the feminine world of Malchus. And that's where you have creation. And that's where you have susceptible to corruption and the whole stuff going on. And that's what needs to be fixed. So the fixing process is taking place through these 30 tractates of Seder Nezikin, in which we're doing the repair in this feminine dimension of Malchus, fixing the woman. And once the woman is fixed, the husband can come down and live with her, which is God, the infinite. And that's the fusion that happens in the days of Mashiach. So we have to finish this rectification with the Isha, with these three bava kama, bava metzia, and bava basra, in this complete healing process that's taking place. Now, so now let's, wait. I have to throw this in right now just to keep you entertained. So we know that Gevura, Malchus is also a king, kingship. What's the first thing you think about when you think about a king? A real king? Fear. People feared the king. The king was a very fearsome being. He has a lot of power. Everything belongs to him. He can even, take someone's life, definitely consecrate someone's property. He has enormous power. A king casts fear. And the main relationship of people to the king has to be one of awe. You can love him, that's nice. If you don't love him, that's also okay. But you don't fear him, you're in trouble. You don't respect him. You have to respect him. So kingship demands, and that's Gevura again. So Malchus is Melech benishpat Yamid Oretz. The king establishes his kingdom with Mishpat. Mishpat is judgment, Gevura. Now we know Kabbalistically, which is beginning into the Kabbalah journey of tonight's class. So this is going to be like reckless numbers here. Okay, so bear with me. The power of Gevura, which we discussed many times, is related to, in its origins, is related, the essential powers of Gevura are five powers of Gevura. They're called Chamesh Gevuros, the 5 powers of Gevura. The 5 powers of Gevura associated to the 5 fingers of the left hand. The left hand is Gevura. The 5 fingers of the left hand. Chamesh Gevura is 5. Also in speech, you have 5 organs of speech. And the 5 organs of speech are restraining powers. Because if you don't use your organs of speech, your tongue, your lips, your mouth, your thing, you emit sound. The sound is just very general. It's not sliced. In order to create nuance in your sound, it's through the organs of speech. So that's all restraining powers. There are 5 gevuras. Hence, we understand why bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. Because bava is 5. Beis, aleph. Beis, aleph. Beis and Beis is 4, 2 and 2. Aleph is 1. Bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. Malchus, her entire being, is built on these 5 gevuras. The 5 gevuras activate on 3 levels in her. In her head is 1 level of gevura. In her torso, midsection, is the 2nd level of gevura. And in her womb is the 3rd element of her gevura. These are the 3 bava. Bava 5. 5 gevuras structuring the world of Nezikin, the world of Malchus, and that's where the tikkun and all this needs to happen. Now, one of the things about the woman is the idea, the sages say, that women are very powerful in dissecting. They have an enormous advantage when it comes to figuring out detail. They are so detail-oriented. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, I have to mention this every time. It's hard to classify, but certain feminine strength is the detailing. The man's strength is more in chachma, which is more the flash, and the woman is bringing it down into detail. One of the elements in where women are weak, the Talmud says, is noshim daiton kalas. The power of das is kal, it's light. It's not as firm. The deeper meaning of that is Malchus does not have a strong das. It's very simple. Das means, what's the ultimate das? The ultimate das means the ultimate awareness. The ultimate awareness is that he is, then there's none but him. If Malchus, which is the battery of creation, or the generator of life, literally the generator, would be saturated with the deep das of the Ein Sof, would have this enormous das of God's truth, then she would be so absolutely convinced there's none but him. Then how could she create a creation? How can her constituents be inside this game and believe that there's something if the creative life force nullifies them immediately? In other words, she would spill that truth into her creation's consciousness, and we would all be so inevitably filled with an awareness that there's only God and no one has free choice. So in order for there to be a creation, and in order for there to be free choice, in order for there to be a presence of a creation, the whole drama of creation in the world, the whole pleasure that gets out of creation can only be if the Malchut, which is the source of energy and life force to the creation, her das is toned down. That's the meaning of Nashim Daitan Kalas. You have less das. And that's the reason why the Zohar says that God treats the sins that happen in Malchus. The sins are not only in the creations, the sin is rooted in Malchus itself. That's where the Gevura is, and that's the source of all restrictions and all constrictions and all of inevitably sins that happen in creation. It's all rooted in the diminishment. It's like God made the moon small, it says. God calls it a sin on his part, that he diminished the moon. He made the moon small, means he weakened the woman's das. If he weakened the woman's das, how can he treat it as intentional? What's the difference between intentional and unintentional? When you're intentional means you have your full das on. You know what you're doing. You realize that you're, God forbid that someone is murdering someone. You have the full awareness of what he's doing. They call it, even in law, meditative, or what was it called? Premeditated murder. It's a much higher level of what's it called, again, punishment, than when it was at the spur of the moment, someone got angry. It's not treated the same. It doesn't have the same severity, because you understand it's a different level of das. Here we treat every type of sin that happens within creation as, from the very beginning, our das is kind of convoluted, because Nashim, because Masechtas Nezikin is the women territory. Aleph, Shin, Hey, Isha, like the first three letters, and women also, they have a 30-day cycle. The women also work with Malchus. Everything is 30, and this is the concept of that whole feminine dimension, which is in the realm of these 30 tractates. That's why the Zohar says that all of this is treated as a unintentional sin. Okay. Now let's examine each of these parts individually, and we're going to start from the end. We're going to start from what the Zohar says, that Masechtas Bava Basra is where it talks about partners, and the Zohar says Raza the Aveda, it's the secret of a lost object. So when we asked, the obvious question was, there's no lost object in Masechtas Bava Basra. But take a look at this. What does the Torah say? Which words the Torah says? Kol Aveda, any lost object. Right? It says on any sinful matter, an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, and what's the final one? Any lost object. Kol Aveda. So watch this magnificent here. I never teach from notes besides when I'm doing Reb Levi Yitzchak Gematria. So here we go. Can't say never, but mostly. Kol Aveda. The Gemara says that in the beginning of the tractate Masechtas Kedushin, the Talmud tells us that a man is responsible to look for a woman. A woman is not responsible to look for a man. God wants us to get married, but the obligation to go find their soulmate is on the man, not on the woman. Why? The Talmud says when someone loses an object, it's not the object that goes to find the owner, it's the owner who goes to find his lost object. And being that the woman is a lost rib, the woman was once part of Adam's rib, he lost her, so he has to go find her. And the Talmud therefore calls the woman Aveda, a lost object. So when we already see the word Kol Aveda, so who is the Aveda, the lost object that we're referring to? That's Malchus. Okay, that's the woman. Who's Kol? Kol is the man. Why is Kol the man? We know in the spheros of the attributes, 10 attributes, 7 emotional attributes. The 6th attribute is called Yesod. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Yesod is the element of bonding. Yesod is in the physical element, it's the power of the man to be intimate with the woman. So it's the actual transmission of man to woman. It's the connection. Yesod is the element of connection from the male to the female. And therefore, Yesod is called Kol. What does Kol mean? Kol means all. Why is it all? Because in this transmission from him to her, it says that the Rambam, for instance, says that the creative energy or the creative substance that is being to procreate and create a child that's coming from the man is basically the DNA of his entire existence, of the entire body. It's coming from every limb of the entire person is being pulled into that drop. And that's why it's called Kol. Spiritually also, we know the attribute of Yesod is receiving Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod. All 5 attributes all flow into Yesod. And then Yesod takes it and gives it to Malchus. That's why Yesod is called Kol. Where do we find that? In davening, in the prayers every morning, we say, L'cha Hashem, to you, God, Hagedula is greatness, Hagavura is might, Hateferes is beauty, Hanetzach, the victory, Vahod, and glory. And these are all attributes that we know. Then we say, L'cha Hashem HaMamlacha, to you, God, is Malchus. The only one we don't mention is Yesod. But we do say Yesod, because we say Ki kol b'shamayim v'aretz, everything that's in heaven and earth. Heaven is male, earth is female. What connects the male and the female? The Yesod. The Yesod is the connection. And that's the word Ki kol. Let's see what the gematria of Ki kol is. Kol is 50. Chaf and Lamed is Chaf is 20. Lamed is 30, is 50. Ki is another 30. Chaf and Yud is another 30. 30 plus 50 is 80. The exact numeric value of the word Yesod. Yesod is 80. So Ki Kol is 80. Now Kol itself is Yesod. It's an interesting thing that he brings. The Talmud tells us in Tractate Shabbos that a baby, a boy, has his bris milah, has his circumcision, usually on the 8th day. But there's certain times when you can't do it on the 8th, it's pushed off of the 9th. Let's say it's Shabbos on the 8th. So Shabbos, you can make a bris, even on Shabbos. But there are certain cases where you don't make a bris on Shabbos. I think it's, if it's a suffix, that for sure, meaning the baby was born maybe, we don't push off Shabbos, but there are cases where you don't make the bris on the 8th, you make it on the 9th. It's possible to do it on the 10th, on the 11th, and on the 12th. So Reb Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, says 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, add the numbers up is 50, Gematria Kol. Because Bris Milah is done in the Yesod, and Yesod is 50. That's why the times for the Bris Milah is Gematria Kol. So now, Kol Aveda. What does it mean, kol aveda? Any lost object. Kol aveda is the unity that there is between Yesod and Malchus. It's the diffusion of these two spheros, of these two attributes. Yesod and Malchus together. We know that Yesod and Malchus have to be together. It's this intimacy that keeps the cosmos in existence. It's him to do in Kol Aveda, in all lost objects. And what did we say before? That is Mesechtes. Which tractate is that? Mesechtes Baba Basra. Now, where is Mesechtes Baba Basra talking about lost objects? Well, the opening Mishnah, Mesechtes Baba Basra, speaks about Hashutfin. It speaks about partners. Who are the partners? Male and female, husband and wife are called partners. Where do we see that husband and wife are called partners? Obviously, we don't have to see it. It's obvious. They get married. They become partners for life. But also we find the sages say, we want to find it in Torah terminology. Where do we see they're called partners? The sages say there are three partners in the creation of man. Shloisha Shutvim, there are three partners in the creation of a person, of a human. Father, mother, and God. Father and mother create the body, and God puts the soul in. So you see that parents are called a husband and wife, and the unity between the husband and a wife are called Shutvim. So Kol Aveda, which is the unification, Aveda is Malchus. We said before the woman is called the Aveda. The man is called Kol. The Yesod element is called Kol. And Kol and Malchus come together. They're unified. That's the Shutvim. They are together. And they're supposed to be together. And they're always together. What does the Mishnah, however, what does the Mishnah in Tractate Baba Basra say? What does the Mishnah talk about? The Mishnah says, the law, that when the Shutzim decide that they want to divide, they want to separate their field, not their field, their courtyard. It says there is a chotzer, there is a courtyard, and now they decide, husband and wife, that they want to split their courtyard. Half and half. What does that mean? This is all part of Mesechtes Nezikin. It's all part of the world of damages, which means it's all part of a world that's not yet rectified. In the rectified world, husband and wife don't want to divide their courtyard. But here we're talking about in a case where they do want to divide it because the world is still in a state of Nezikin. It's still in a state. Malchus is still having trouble. You know, we haven't yet gotten over yet the snake's conversation with Chava. So there is stuff that are going on which causes wreckages in the system. So Kol Aveda is supposed to be together, but now the two Shutvim, Ratzu, they want to split their Chatzah. So first of all, before we get, and that's what? That's exile. During exile, male and female are not standing face to face, they're standing back to back. So the Mishnah's beginning of Mesechtes Baba Basra is talking about exile. The partners, the Kol and the Aveda, which is Yesod and Malchus, that are supposed to be together, are now, and supposed to be face to face, are deciding they want to split their chutzah, their courtyard. How do they split it? They're going to build a kotel. A wall, a kaisel, which is a wall. And the Mishnah talks about there are 4 different structures that they can possibly make. And the Mishnah talks about how big it, if they're using these material, if they're using this material, the Mishnah is giving 4 different types of structure, which is the separation of Yesod and Malchus on 4 different levels. But why are they dividing on 4 different levels? And what's this courtyard? There's a chutzner that they're dividing. But for a moment, I want to talk about the kotel, the wall that they're putting up. You see, the word, what is the holiest place that the Jewish people have currently? We have a kotel. People go to the kotel. But kotel is symbolizing the time of exile. When the temple is here, no one is going to pay attention to the kotel. Because the kaisel is the kotel. It's meant for now. It's a remnant of the temple. You see, it's reminding us that God hasn't left us, and God is always with us. But the relationship is not one of intimacy; it's back to back. And you see it in the word kotel. The word kotel is chav vav. Chav vav is 26. That's God's name. Yud K Vav K. That's God's name. That's the male side of God. Havaya is there's an Eranpin, the element of Yesod, not just Yesod, but Yesod is the extension of the man. That's Havaya, that's Yud K Vav K. Tail, Taf Lamed, is Taf is 400 and Lamed is 30. So Taf and Lamed together is 430. 430 is 5 times the name Elokim. If you take Elokim, which is 86, and you make 5 times 86, it's 4. I did the math. I didn't trust anything over here. I used my calculator, but 5 times 86 is gematria of 430. If that's the case, if 5 times, 1 second. So, and we know Elokim is Malchus, because Malchus, what's the name of Elokim? The name of Gevura, constriction. So Malchus is Elokim. And how many Gevuras is Malchus built on? 5. So 5 times Elokim is Taf Lamed. Kotel, Chavav, is the Eberster on one side and tail on the other side. But when they're standing, when do we have a kotel? When there is a division amongst them. So when we go to the kotel, on the one hand, we're coming so close to God. We're kissing it, but on the other hand, why is there a wall there? We don't want a wall. The wall is telling us, till here, you can come, you can't go further. That means that there's no intimacy. He's like, we're talking from across the wall. And that's Hashutzvim. That's the partners, husband and wife, Hashem and the Jewish people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah. Yesod and Malchus are disconnected. They built a mechitza, they built a wall between them. But where are they building it? In a courtyard. So what's the mystery of the word chatzer? So here's really cool Kabalah, okay? And he says like this. In the Zohar it says, there's a pasuk that says, it speaks about God, about courtyard, and it speaks about courtyard in the plural. It says, Ashrei, fortunate, Ashrei tivchar usekarev, fortunate are those who choose and get close. Yishkain chatzeirecha, they dwell in your courtyards. Nizba betuv beisecha, they become satiated with the goodness of your house. Kedosh heichalecha, the holiness of your chamber. So what do we have? We have God's courtyards, chatzeirecha, your courtyards, plural. Beisecha, his house. Obviously, the house is more inside than the courtyard. And your chamber, heichalecha, is your inner chamber. So the Zohar says, the courtyards, that's Yesod and Malchus. Means the divine levels of Yesod and Malchus are considered still external of the divine, because they're the most outside Sefirot. They're the most external Sefirot. So they're the courtyards. You go in deeper, you go into the house. Beitecha, that's the house. That's Chesed, Gevura, Teferes. That's already called the house. Heichalecha, your Heichal, that's Bina. Bina is a Heichal because Chachma dwells in Bina. So you go to Heichal, that's all the way in. So the Zohar says clearly that Chatzeirecha is Yesod and Malchus. And that's why the Shutzvim, the partners, who are the partners? Yesod and Malchus. They really have one courtyard, but now they're dividing the courtyard because at the time of exile, they're causing a division in the court. They're building this kotel because now they're not going to be face to face, they're going to be back to back to create a certain distance that there is during the time of exile. And he goes on to explain phenomenally. I'm getting late, or else I would take you and dazzle you with this. How Chatzer, should we do it? I'm just holding at the beginning of now. The truth is, I did speak so much at the end already, so maybe we can do this. I want to do this. He explains why, because it's just this is great. He explains why. How do we have Chatzer in Malchus, and how do we have Chatzer in Yesod? We find in Kabalah that Chatzer is Yesod and Chatzer is Malchus. Chatzer is made up of these 3 letters: Ches, Tzadik, Reish. Tzadik, the Tzadik in the word Chatzer is Yesod, because Yesod is called Tzadik. Someone who is who is considered a tzaddik, particularly someone who facilitates and captures the energy of Yesod. Our holiness is from Malchut. That's the holiness of our soul. Higher than that is more hard for us to tap. Someone who taps higher than Malchus to a higher level, to the transcendental levels, to the masculine levels of divine light, is called Yesod. It's called a tzaddik. Tzaddik is related to the attributes, right? And that's why we also know mystically, Kabbalistically, that particularly who's a tzaddik? Someone who is very, 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 very clean in all aspects of holiness, which means someone who's in all sexual matters, there's no sin at all. That's a tzaddik. So tzaddik is related to Yesod, the attribute of Yesod. It's actually hinted to in the shape of a tzaddik. The tzaddik itself represents the Yesod. But not right now. So there is tzaddik. Then there is, in the word chatzer, there is reish ches. The other two letters. Reish and ches are 208. 208. Gematria Yitzchak. Yitzchak is 208. When Yitzchak was born, Hashem told to Amram Avinu, Va'arbe ezaro, I'm going to increase his children. And Yitzchak, and I gave him Yitzchak. Which is a stunning statement. God says, I will increase his children, I will give him Yitzchak. Yitzchak is only one child. What do you mean I'm giving him a lot? Yeah, Yitzchak will turn into many, but Yitzchak is only one child. So the explanation given is God is kind of tricking him, not tricking. God forbid, God is not tricking him at all, but it sounds like the answer sounds like a trick. Yitzchak is Gematria 208, and Arbe, which means I will increase, is also 208. So by me giving him one child, Yitzchak, I really fulfilled my promise. Arbe, I will increase his children because Yitzchak is 208, and Arbe, which means I will increase his 208. But come on, are you playing games, God? You gave him one child, and even him, you almost had him slaughtered. He survived. And you have Yitzchak is 208, and Arbe is 208. How does Yitzchak means I multiply his children? The answer is multiple children means you have every kind of child. That's multiple, obviously multiple. When is it considered you have enough? You have, in Torah, let's think about it for a moment. In Torah, what's considered every type of child? I'll let you guess. What number is considered every type of child? And it's very basic in Jewish experience. The most important experience of dealing with your children, education. Pesach by the Seder. The Torah speaks of 4 different children. Chacham, Rasha, Tam, Ena Yodei Elisha. These are the 4 children who sew up to the Seder. In Hebrew, right, what's the word for a son? Ben. Ben is a boy. Ben is 52. 52 times 4. Ben times 4 is 208. So when the God gives him Yitzchak, he gave him Arbe. He gave him really, in Yitzchak, there's all 4 children. Arba bonim, it's Arbe. That's a lot. Now, what is the relationship? We're going back to the word chatzer, courtyard, and we're saying it's called Yesod. The tzaddik is Yesod. What does that do with the children? Because what's responsible to creating children? Which particular element in the human being? That's the Yesod. Yesod is the procreative organ. It's where the children are created. So therefore, Yesod has 4 children. So Chatzer, which is tzaddik, and Ches and Reish, courtyard, which we said before, Yesod is called the courtyard. It's the Chatzer is Yesod with its 4 children. Now let's look at. Wait. Which name of God is associated with Yesod? Which name of Hashem? We know that Hashem has 7 names that are not erasable. 7 names. Each name is representing to God manifesting in a different attribute. So which attribute of the Eibishter, of which name of God is associated with Yesod? The name Shakai. Shin Dalit Yud. When it talks about having children, the pasuk says, Birchas Shadayim V'Racham. The blessings of Shadayim and Rechem. Rechem is the womb. That's the female productive a productive organ. And shadayim is referring to the males. Shadayim means to throw. Shadayim, and there's the creation of a child is to the sperm coming out and that's shadayim viracham. So shakai, the nen shin dalid yud, is associated with the divine attribute of Yesod. Now, in Kabbalah, it says a fascinating thing, that the name Shakai has 4 different shapes. So it says in the Arizal, 4 different shapes to the name Shakai. 1 equals 40, 1 equals 70, the other one equals 88, and the other one equals 100. I want to tell you something. The level of mystery that there is, the unbelievable amount of secret. In other words, you can figure something out, and then you break into a much deeper code. In other words, once you know the secret of letters, and you know gematria, so you can start. We can't do it on our own, but you're following the basic principles. You start seeing things that are unbelievable. But that's looking at letters. Do you know that every letter is made up of different letters? So you can break every letter down into many letters. And therefore the Zohar says, that the Arizal says, that in the name Shakai, there are 4 different manifestations of Shakai. Shakai itself, Shin Daled Yud, is Gematria 314. But not the name Shin Daled Yud as the full letter, 300, but let's look at the sections of the letter. So Shin Daled Yud has 4 different manifestations. Let me give you the first shape. I never heard this before I learned this today, so this was cool to me. Shin is made up of 3 lines, right? You make a shin. So shin is 3 vavs. Shin, 1, 2, 3. 3 vavs. Vav is 6. 3 times 6, 18. Shin is 18. Dalid is a line on the top and a line down, so it's 2 vavs. Another 2 vavs, 18 plus 12 is it's 12. 18 plus 12 is what? 30. Yud is 10. It's a dot, and it's 10. So 30 plus 10, 40. So in one easy way of looking at Shin Daled Yud, Gematria 40. Now, here's the second rollout of the name Shakas. The shins are 3 vavs, but we're forgetting something. We ignored. On top of each vav is a shape of a yud. On top of the is a shape of a yud. So in that one, you have to count it as 3 vavs, which is 18, plus 3 yuds. So 3 yuds, each yud is 10. 3 times 10 is 30, plus 18, 48. The shin is 48 on its own. Dalid, 2 vavs. Vav and vav is dalid. Together it's 12. 48 plus 12, 60. The yud remains 1, 10. So together, shin dalid yud is what? 70. This is the second count. Shin dalid yud is 70. Now let's get the third way of looking at shin dalid yud, according to the Arizal. Shin remains the same. What? 3 vavs and 3 yuds, 48. Dalid remains the same. And all 4 numbers, Dalid will always remain the same. Dalid is always 2 vavs, is 12. 48 plus 12, what did we say? 48 plus 12 is 60. Fine. Yud, instead of being 10, this is what they do with the Yud. The Yud is 1 dot in the middle. The Yud is really just a 1 little decimal point. But if you look at a Yud, first of all, the decimal point is stretched out. And it has a little thorn on the top and a little thorn on the bottom. Each one of those stretches is considered a vav. So there is a vav going up, a vav in the Yud, stretching the Yud out, and a vav. So really, what's a Yud? A Yud is 10 plus 3 vavs plus 18. So it's 28. Whoever knew that a Yud is 28? So now, if you make 28 plus 12, 28 plus 60 is 88. So the third Shakai is 88. What do we have? 40, 70, 88. And here's the last one. Shin stays the same, 48. 3 vavs, 3 yuds, 48. Daled remains the same, 12, 60. But the yud, we're going to increase it just a little bit. Why? Instead of looking at the yud is a dot, plus 3 vavs, they're not really vavs. They're really just yuds. The dot itself plus 3 extra dots. So we don't look at it as yud plus 18. We look at it as yud plus 30, because yud. So it equals 40. So equals 100. That's what the Arizal says mystically. Shem Shakai has 4 different ways of looking. I don't know. I mean, these things get me excited, because who would have ever known all these nuances in the name Shakai and how it works and so on. Now, okay, if you take, let's add them up. 40 plus 70. Bear with me. Let's do this together. 40 plus 70. Everybody's tired already. 40 plus 70 is what? 110. 110 plus 88. 110 plus 88 is 198. Okay? Plus 100. The last one is 100. It's 298. How much is Chatzer? Tzadik Ches Reish. 298. So Chatzer, therefore, he's showing you from all directions how Chatzer is Yesod, because the name of Yesod is Shakai. Shakai has 4 manifestations. And by the way, those 4 manifestations of Shakai are related to the 4 boys, for the 4 sons. Now, Malchus, remember I said courtyard, there's 2 courtyards. Because it's Shutzvim, it's 2 partners that are dividing a courtyard. So the Chatzer has to belong to both of them. So Yesod has a courtyard, and Malchus also has a courtyard. How does Malchus have a courtyard? Cool, let's see. Tzaddik, that we said before, is Yesod. That's if you spell tzaddik with a yud, tzaddik. But if you take away the yud, and you just leave tzedek, that's Malchus. In the Zohar, in Pasach Eliyahu, it says, tzedek ihu Malchus kadisha. Tzedek is Malchus. And by the way, what's the cosmic marriage? The cosmic marriage is tzedek and tzaddik. When tzaddik and tzedek get married, it's a tzaddik and a tzaddikis. The tzedek is Malchus. Tzaddik is Yesod. Yesod and Malchus get together. So we know that tzedek is Malchus. And when Yesod gives Malchus light, it gives her an infusion, then she becomes tzedakah. First she's tzedek, and then she becomes tzedakah. But that's a different discussion. But in any case, so the tzaddik of the word Chatzer is Malchus. And then the 208, remember there's a Ches and a Reish, 208. 208 are the 4 sons of her. Just like he has 4 sons, the woman is also a partner in the children, right? If there are 4 sons from the father, 4 sons from the mother. Maybe it's the same 4 sons, but the masculine element of them and the feminine element of them, right? So there's 4 sons to Malchus. How do we see that Malchus has 4 sons? Malchus, interesting, is also called Behema, because Malchus is, the name of Malchus is 52. Now, when it comes to the kashrut of animals, in order for something to be kosher, what does the Torah say? It's only kosher if it chews its cud. And the Hebrew word for choosing the cud is male geira. Geira, which means it's cud, it regurgitates, it brings it back up. Geira is 208. Reish, Gimel, Hey. Reish is 200, Gimel is 3, 208. So, and what does it have to do with an animal? Because Malchus is called Behema. So kosher animal is Malchus in its higher state. So you see that the number 208 applies to Malchus and so forth. Another very cool reason why Malchus is Chatzer courtyard. I told you earlier that the main power of Malchus comes from Gevura. She's structured from the powers of, her whole energy is structured from the powers of Gevura. Where do her Gevuras come from? Gevura exists on 3 levels. Bina is the highest level of Gevura. That's where Gevura starts from. That's why Bina, what's Bina? Bina is the power to take an idea and break it up into pieces. to sectionalize it. That's why Bina is Gevura. That's what Gevura is. Restraining it, dividing it, separating it, seeing all the parts, compartmentalize something. So that's the power of Gevura. It's from Bina, also from the attribute Gevura, and also from the attribute of Hod. Hod is also on the left side. Netzach is on the right side, Hod is on the left side. So Bina, Gevura, Hod. So watch this. Bina is 67. The gematria of the word Bina, 67. Gevura is 216. Hod is 15. Let's add it up. 67 plus 216 plus 15, 298, which is Chatzer. So therefore, Malchus has got her Chatzer, and Yesod has got his Chatzer. And now when they're face to face, they share their Chatzer. They both have one quarter. There's no need for a wall. But when exile comes along and there's going to be a separation between him and her, and they're putting a kotel, they're putting a wall in between. Now we understand there's a separation between kol and aveda. That's why when the pasuk says al kol aveda, when it's talking about different damages, and the Gemara says and the Zohar says that's mesechtes bava basra, and everybody's wondering there's no bal kol aveda. No, he's not talking about a lost object. And by the way, the Zohar uses the term raza da aveda. It's the secret of aveda. In Kabbalah, it says that every time it mentions the word secret, it's referring to Yesod. Because Yesod is private. It's the private element of a person. So Yesod is private, it's secret. And so it says, Raza da Aveda is the woman. Raza da Aveda means the secret of the Yesod. So that's what it's talking about. And then these are the shutzvim who are going to create a barrier separating them. Now, because they each have four sons, as we spoke earlier, four children, that would mean that Yesod and Malchus both have an element of 4 to them, and their connection is on 4 levels. So when they build the mechitza, the Gemara actually in Masechtas Baba Basra now says that there are 4 different types of mechitzas they can be building this wall with. Either they can be building it with plain stones that are not cut stones, or they're building it with cut stones, or they're building it with full bricks, which are man-made stones, or they're building it with half a bricks. And the Gemara is discussing the size of all these 4 different types of walls that they're building. Why 4? Because it corresponds to the 4 children that there are in Yesod and Malchus. Like we spoke earlier, the 4 images in the name Shakai, Shin, Daled, Yud, we said before, has 4 manifestations. Now the word mechitza, they're making a kotel, they're building a wall, which we said represents the separation, but they're making it through a mechitza. Mechitza is gematria Kufnun Gimel 153. That's the gematria of mechitza. But since we're making 4 mechitzas, either like this, or like this, or like that, 4 times 153, gematria is 612. Numeric value 612. 612 is the exact gematria of the word bris. Tuf is 400, Reish is 200, and then Yud Bey is bris. Bris is the covenant, is Yesod. Yesod is bris. That's why you do the bris milah on the Yesod. Now, it's not just his bris. They're both partners in the wall. Because a woman also has a bris, even though she doesn't have a physical bris in the sense that she gets circumcised. But the Gemara says a woman is born with a bris. She has the covenant already naturally. Bris also means the whole power of Yesod is the attraction between a man and a woman. So just like there is the desire of the man to be intimate with the woman, there is the desire of the woman to be intimate with her husband. So the woman's bris is her Yesod, her yearning for him. His bris is his yearning for her. And that's what makes bris. And when there is no mechitza, which means the two are together, now that they're separated with this mechitza, so there's no facilitation of this bris. They're on the two sides of the wall and they're yearning. We're yearning for our intimacy with God. This is the time of exile. We're lacking in that bris, the fulfillment of that bris, which we're supposed to be having when Mashiach comes. Obviously, we have the completion of this bris. But now we understand a little bit what that Mishnah means when the Mishnah talks about Kabalah of Law. Now we back up a little bit. I'm going to do this very quickly because we really have to end this year. I can go on for another hour and a half. So, if Kol Aveda in the end of the pasuk is referring to the Yesod and Malchus, Kol means all inclusive, which is Yesod and Malchus. Then in the beginning of the pasuk, remember I said right in the beginning of the class, I said there's two generalities in this verse. Al Kol Aveda is general. And at the beginning, when it says Al Kol Devar Pesha, on every word of Pesha, on every sinful matter, it also uses general. And then it says the four specifics: Shor, Chamor, Seh, Salma, ox, donkey, sheep, and garment. So now let's go to the Al Kol Devar Pesha. Go back to the beginning of the verse. We're talking again, it says again the word kol. Kol, we said, means inclusive, includes everything. What other attribute includes many attributes besides Yesod? Yesod pulls from all the attributes and it gives to Malchus. What other attribute is including all the attributes? It's the attribute on top of Yesod, the origins of Yesod, is Das. Das, the Zohar calls, it's the key to all the other six emotions. It's called Maftech, because without Das, what's Das? Das is the ability to connect to an idea, internalize something, to feel something, to a concept. You become internalized it, you feel it so deeply, and therefore it feeds your emotions. Because you can only get excited about something if you're really connected to something. So Das is our ability to really connect, to literally you can touch the thing that you're thinking about and you get excited about it. It's almost like you can touch it psychologically, not physically. It's tangible, it becomes so real to you. So your emotions get excited. So without Das, we can't create any emotion. Yesod for sure not, which is bonding without Das doesn't work. That's what the sages say. There is no physical excitement without Das. If a person is distracted, there's no physical excitement for intimacy. They can't be in the moment because there's no Das. Das is focus. So Das is considered the mother. Bina is the mother of the emotions. Das is the energy of the emotions. So Das is therefore called Kol. It includes all the lower Sefirot. Now, since we're talking about damages over here, again, let's go back to what we're talking about. We're talking about Nezikin. We're talking about damages. So we're talking about judgments. We're talking about Gevura. This is what makes Malchus, we said before, is full of judgments. So we're talking about the whole world of judgments. So therefore, Das includes within it all the later individual types of judgments, which those restrictions or judgments and powers are going to turn later, all the way downstream, they're going to turn into violent behaviors down here. But in their source, they're the inner structure of Malchus. She's being built by these powerful Gevuras. Das includes them all. That's why the word that is used to describe the Gevura of Das is Kol, which Kol is everything. But what? Devar Pesha, every sinful matter. Devar Pesha is the Gevura of Das. Why is it the Gevura of Das? What's the connection of Devar Pesha to the Gevura of Das? Watch this amazing thing. What's Gevura? Gevura is heat, right? Chesed is coolness. Water flows, it's naturally cool. Fire is heat. Fire is Gevura. Gevura is hot. If you think about heat, what's like the hottest thing down here? A furnace, an oven. Devar Pesha, the words Devar Pesha together is gematria 656. Exact gematria of the word tanor. What's a tanor? Tanor is an oven, a baker's oven. And that's the source of all gevura. Das includes all the gevuras in it. And therefore the das is called devar pesha, which is the numeric value, as I said before, of the word tanor. So when you say al kol devar pesha, that's the gevura of das, which includes all the later detailed individual gevuras. And to add to that, just let me take a look over here, because I remember there was something over here that I'm missing here. Kol devar pesha, kol dar kol midush, kol atzvir, kol gevuras vadinim, devar pesha 656 tanor, kol sholikim. Oh, now I'm almost done. Let me give you this. Which name of God? This is another really cool idea. Which name of God is the name associated with Gevura? Elokim. I mentioned that earlier. Elokim. Now, there is Elokim. There's multi-levels in the name of Elokim. One level of the name of Elokim is simple letters of Elokim. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem. If you make the gematria of Elokim, is 86. We discussed that many times in this class. Elokim is 86. But here's another thing. Sometimes when we do a gematria, it's called rabua. Rabua means we multiply the letters, which means we do like this: Aleph, and then of the name of Elokim. We make like a pyramid. We put the first letter up on one line. The next line we put 2 letters. The next line we put 3 letters, and the next line we put 4 letters, and the next line we put 5 letters. We put all the letters out. And then we add up the numeric value of all the lines together. It's some system of intensifying or reducing. It's reducing the light, creating more. That means it's more constriction, it's more concealment, it's more judgment. So if you do that in the name of Elokim, Aleph, Lamed, I'm not going to do it right now. I'm just telling you what it is. It equals 200. So far we have 286. 86 from the regular Elokim, plus 200. Now there's another element in the name of Elokim. If you really want to break Elokim really open on all levels, you want to connect every element of Gevura of the name of Elokim. And that is you fill the inside hidden letters of the word. Aleph is Aleph Lamed Pei. So it's Gematria 111. Aleph, it's not just a letter Aleph. Aleph is 1, but Aleph is 111. Lamed is 74. Lamed Mem Dal. Hey, you fill the hey with a yud, so it's 15. Hey yud. Aleph. Hey. Hey. Yud is 20. Yud vav dalet. Yud is 10 plus vav dal is another 10. And the last one is mem. Mem is mem. 2 mems, so it's 80. Add it all up, you have 300. So when you take Elokim, 300. Then you take, because that you're filling the inside letters. Then you take Elokim and you put it in a pyramid. You add the letters up. Then you take Elokim simples, 86. 200, 300 is 500, 586. But not done yet. In the name of Elokim, there's also the nekudot on the bottom, the dots. So the word Elokim has a segol. Segol is 3 dots. But if you look in a siddur, you'll see that besides the segol, the 3 dots, there's also a sheva right next to it. So it's really 5 dots under the aleph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On top of the lamed, there is a cholam. There's another dot. That's 6 dots. And under the hey is a chirik. He, elo. Kim, it's a. So it's 1 more dot. So it's 7 dots. Every dot is a yud. 7 yuds is 70. So now we take 586 plus 70, 656 gematria oven tanur. Because when you take Elokim, all elements together create you an oven. So when you talk about an oven, you see, that's what drives me insane when I read this stuff. Because we're walking around this world and encountering an oven and a thing, and we're not realizing we're just basically walking around divine names. Everything is a godly code. There's literally nothing in the world that's not talking to you, that is not spiritual, that is not just a I know I'm so late, and I have to tell you this crazy story. I'm having problems with my car. We have two cars and this minivan. It's making me crazy. Lately, the alarm was set off, and every time I went to the car and I tried to go into the car, beep, and I couldn't shut it. No matter what I would do, the whole block is turning, coming outside in the middle of 1 o'clock in the morning. I can't start. So crazy. Anyways, I had to take it to the mechanic, and they disconnected it. I couldn't figure out what the problem is, and he disconnected the alarm. Anyways, what happened in the end was, turns out that in the process of disconnecting the alarm, they rewired something, and it drained my battery. So then I had to call the electrician in. I had to take it in, and they told me that this mechanic can't fix doesn't know what's wrong. So he's sending me to an electrician to fix it. So I said that meanwhile, I can't leave it like this because I'm going to come back in the morning and the battery is going to be drained because there's some usually if you leave your light on the car, it drains the battery, but I didn't have any light open and it's still draining the battery. So he told me there's some kind of electrical fault where it's draining the battery when the car is not on. Usually the battery charges with the engine, but the engine is not on, so the battery is just draining. And this is what happened to me. And I'm sitting there, but this is my headache. So I'm thinking to myself, there must be some godly teaching here, because why is this my headache? And I realized that today it hit me, it was so simple. You see, the engine, that's your godly soul. That's because that's the true engine in your life. The battery, that's the animal soul. Because the battery is what actually is just giving the physical electricity. When your animal soul is plugged into your godly soul, it's always recharging because it's charged into an infinite source. The godly soul is always charging. But if you shut your godly soul down, for whatever reason, you have to shut the battery down. You can't have your animal soul, which is your battery, operating without your godly soul. Now, if you have some activity, if I have, obviously it's my lesson to me, if I have some activity in my life that's draining my battery, but when my engine is off, which means I'm operating from my animal soul and using energy from my animal soul without draining it into any activity. That's an electric current that's being pulled from the battery. When the battery is not plugged into the engine, which means it's not plugged into my higher consciousness, my soul that's part to God, then what's going to happen is when I want to turn my soul on and get my animal soul to do what I'm supposed to do, there's no more energy left. You see, if we drain our energy into other things, you have no more energy to do what you're supposed to do, the godly things you're supposed to do. So this was a teaching to me that I got to make sure that I have no drainage coming from my battery when it's not connecting to the higher consciousness, to the soul. It's my own private lesson, but the reason I'm saying it is because learning all of this all the time teaches you that there's absolutely not a single thing that is in your life that doesn't have a spiritual, godly content to it that is applicable to you, that's talking to you. So we're saying over here that all elements of Elohim together is gematria Tanner on all levels, and that's the same gematria of the word Devar Pesha, which the verse is saying this is the beginning of all gevura, of all types of harm that can be in the world. That's the Devar Pesha, that's the das, that's the gevura coming from das, which is a general gevura. Then the next level of gevura is shor chamor seh. That's the gevura coming from gevura itself. Because the das is the highest. No, shor chamor seh, he explains, is chesed gevura teferes. Because and just quickly, shor is. He does two ways of learning it. Shor is either chesed or gevura, because usually shor is gevura, because the ox is on the left side. But it's possible to learn shor as chesed as well, which I can't have time for that now. Chamor comes from the word chumra. Chumra means stringent, which again is gevura. Gevura is stringent. Se is teferes. Sheep is teferes. That's why Yaakov Avinu was always working with the sheep, because Yaakov is teferes. The Egyptians also used to serve the sheep as an idol. That was their god, because teferes makes you rich. All richness comes from teferes, and that's why for abundance they were tapping into there's many reasons why Seh is associated with teferes. So these three types of gevuras are the chesed gevura teferes element that goes into malchus. And finally, salma, the garment, is netzach and hod. Why is netzach and hod the garment? Because the pasuk says, "Hod v'hadar lavashta," glory, which is hod, and hadar and splendor, which is netzach, lavashta, you dressed yourself. So netzach and hod are called garment. But since netzach and hod are the two thighs that are always together, even more, see, the two arms are separate. They're separated by the torso. The thighs come together. So netzach and hod are far more together. That's why they're both considered salma, one garment. But what does the Mishnah say in the Sechtes bava metzia? Shnayim oichsim betalas, two holding on to the garment. Why does it start with two? Because it's netzach and hod. Netzach and hod are two that are both holding on to the salma, to the garment. So do you realize, he says, there's just an incredible mysticism that's going on in these tractates. Two people holding, these are the gevuris associated with netzach and hod. Shor, Chamor, and Seh are the four fathers of Nezikin that are in Masechtas Bava Kama. Even though it only mentions 3 and not 4, and in Talmud it mentions 4, because the das, which we said, which precedes them all, is also included. So the 4 are really including the das as well, and that's why the last one of the 4 is a fire, the oven that we just mentioned, damages that come from the fire. So the 4 elements in the Masechtas Bava Kama are das, chesed, gevura, teferes of Malchus. The Masechtas Bava Metzia is dealing with netzach and hod of Malchus. That's the shnayim oichsim betalas, two people holding on to the talis. And then finally, the Yesod and Malchus of Malchus, that's the partners that are going to split the field. This is the sum totality of all element of Gevura that the attribute of Malchus is built on. So what do we say? Because of all these Gevuras, sin can happen, destructive elements can happen. But how do we fix all that? How do we repair all the damage that there could be in a world which has all this multiplicity and all this, as we say, it's built on all these restrictions which cause divisions and so on and so forth. How do you do that? Shimru Mishpat, the verses say. Observe Mishpat. In George, Mishpat is 429, 430. Mishpat is 5 times the name of Elokim. The 5 Gevuras. How do we sweeten? How do we rectify the 5 Gevuras? Shimru Mishpat, ve'ela ha-mishpatim, this week's parasha. Learn. So the Zohar is saying, what is that? Learn bava kama, bava metzia, bava basra. And then you're gonna adhere to it, adhere to the obedience to these laws. They could be very, very nitty gritty. They could be very, very, but all this together is a rectification of the entire Gevura element, which is in Malchus, which because of that is associated with Devar Pesha, with all kinds of possible damages of this and violence, and all. This includes every type of corruption and every type of violence that happens throughout all of history. It's all included in all of this. But by us learning Shimru Mishpat, observe and watch Mishpat, Vasu Tzedakah and do Tzedakah, eventually we're going to have a rectified world. Kikroiva Yeshuasi Lavai, my Yeshua is about to come. V'tzidkasi liyigoles, so on and so forth. I did a little bit of an abbreviation as I was getting to the end, but this is generally the idea. And this is just teaching us just one thing, that there's so much sod. There's so much secret in every nuance of Torah that we have no clue when we're learning it on a simple level. And when Mashiach will come, all this incredible godly content will come to the surface in Torah. And we're going to be so enthralled and enthused because we will never get the end of the unbelievable, never-ending mystery that is going to start, popping out from every verse, from every Mishnah, from every law. We're going to uncover all this incredible mysticism that's there and godliness, and we're going to see endlessly. And we're not only going to see it in the Torah, we're going to start seeing it in every aspect of life, as an engine breakdown or as a this thing, and this is all God talking to us every minute. There's nothing that's random. That's nothing that's just plain. May we merit already to have the complete rectification that's mentioned in Parshas Mishpatim, and Hashem should forgive us all for all the misdeeds, because ultimately it's His fault and He knows it. So He might as well take the blame for all of it and bring one big atonement for all of existence and for all of mankind. Repair the damage, remove the kotel, Let us go on to the building itself, and let us move from the courtyard into the house and into the inner chamber until we reach absolute intimacy and oneness with Hashem himself. And may that be now. Chesed u'berachanu. Chaim. Oy. A little secret, a little mysticism.